Secretly, in the labs of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, a mouse is retrieved from its cage to be decapitated. Meanwhile, Claire arrives at the company's very modern facilities to participate in some clinical trials for 5 days because she needs the money. Claire tries to tell her worried mother not to contact her anymore, but the message doesn't go through. Then the group meets Dr. Burke, who will supervise the trial. The medicine dosage will start low and go up each day, and during those 5 days, participants won't be allowed to leave that floor. During the rest of the day, a nurse keeps checking on their health, repeating the same questions about any possible pain, checking their pulse, taking blood samples, and even following them into the bathroom to take samples there too. After puking in the bathroom, Claire bumps into Amir and learns he's a medical student who hopes to get an internship with the company in the future. That night, Claire's brain keeps having a strange chemical reaction, and she can't sleep. When she leaves her room, she discovers all the others can't sleep either, which worries them. Marcus says he's feeling something he can't describe. The next morning, Dr. Burke tells them that a bit of insomnia isn't a big deal, and the process of dozens of tests starts again. Later in her office, Dr. Burke calls her superiors to inform them that whatever she's testing is going directly into the participant's central nervous system and causing serious brain inflammation. The higher-ups remind her this is a double-blind trial, meaning she isn't allowed to have any more information. The next day, Dr. Burke informs the group that the parameters of the trial have changed, and now the company wants to know how long the group can stay awake. They are forbidden from trying to sleep, and if they feel too tired, they must inform Dr. Burke or a nurse. After Claire takes the new dose, she's put in an MRI machine, which makes her very anxious because she's claustrophobic. Dr. Burke reminds them they're free to leave at any point, but also announces that every person who stays until the end will get a bonus of 30,000 euros. The group starts playing music and drinking champagne to celebrate. Claire starts to yawn multiple times in a row, so she leaves to inform Dr. Burke. Then Ray yawns as well, so Dr. Burke interrupts the celebrations and sends everyone to drink water. Afterwards, Dr. Burke calls her superiors again, explaining that the participants' immune systems have gone haywire. After she leaves her office, Amir sneaks inside and looks at the test results on her computer, discovering the brain inflammation. Horrified, he copies all the files onto a flash drive. Back to the group, they're watching TV when the screen suddenly starts failing. Claire notices Allison sitting on her own and approaches her to apologize, only to discover she's fallen asleep. At that moment, Allison starts bleeding from her eyes, nose, and ears, and after a lot of shaking, she dies. When Dr. Burke sees this, the facility computer announces that there has been a security breach, so Dr. Burke and the participants immediately run away. The door's already closing, but Dr. Burke tries to cross anyway. Dr. Burke apologizes and dies while the door closes, leaving the participants stuck inside. Amir comes out of Dr. Burke's office and tells everyone to stay awake because if they fall asleep, they'll die. He explains he saw the tests and that for the last 4 days, their brains have been pushed into overdrive, so now they're shutting down. They look around and find a bunch of smelling salts, so each of them gets 5 packets that should last all night. Amir warns them to use them at the last second. For the next few hours, the group tries their best to stay awake. By now, they've been awake for 100 hours. Amir thinks that the brain inflammation will go down now that they don't take the medicine anymore, but when he scans Claire's brain for a checkup, the results terrify him. However, he doesn't tell the others. As Claire walks down the corridor, she feels incredibly dizzy and begins hearing her mother's voice. She decides to record a message for her mother, who is under palliative care in the hospital because her liver was ruined by all the drinking. However, Claire ends up deleting the video. Afterward, she finds the mice in the lab and decides to free them, but they refuse to go away. With 16 hours to go, the group starts having trouble staying awake. Meanwhile, Amir continues to run tests in the exam room with the 2 bodies, and suddenly Dr. Burke sits up behind him. However, when Amir turns around, she's still down and dead, which means he's starting to experience hallucinations. In the rec room, Claire stares at the wall while she continues to hear her mother's voice. Afterward, Claire goes to Dr. Burke's office and looks at the brain scans before checking her patient file. Discovers notes that talk about the destructive behavior and despair in her life. Later, Claire finds Vanessa using fire to stay awake, saying she refuses to give up. In the bathroom, Marcus is whistling and hears someone whistle back, although he's supposed to be alone. Then he turns on the tap, only to discover the water doesn't make noise when it falls. Scared, Marcus leaves the bathroom and hears the whistling in the corridors. Marcus goes through the door and into a deep darkness, and a moment later, The others find him dead on the floor because the hallucination made him fall asleep. Claire feels dizzy and has a vision of Allison waking up. She makes it to the kitchen. She uses fire to reanimate her body. The resulting burn scar is awful, but Claire feels awake and alert now. After bandaging her hand, she finds the others and yells at them, announcing she's found a way. She explains how the fire triggered a surge of adrenaline, which jolted her awake, and proposes they all use fire to stay alive. The tension in the room grows as Vanessa and Ray consider Claire's suggestion. They're desperate to stay awake, and the idea of permanent brain damage seems less terrifying than the thought of immediate death. But Marcus and Amir remain firm. They believe staying alive without causing further harm is the best option, and they warn that the potential consequences of using fire are unknown. Eventually, even Vanessa and Ray back down, leaving Claire feeling isolated and frustrated. With 10 hours remaining, exhaustion starts taking its toll on everyone. The smelling salts are gone, and the constant fight to stay awake is draining their mental and physical strength. Hallucinations become more frequent. Marcus sees his father telling him he's proud, while Claire constantly hears her mother's voice calling out to her. In the midst of this chaos, Amir notices something strange. The computer, which has been repeating the same message about patience, now displays a different message. Subject 6 failed to comply. With only 5 hours remaining, hope flickers in the group's eyes for the first time in hours. Just as they're about to give in to despair, a faint sound pierces the silence, a distant banging noise. It's faint at first, but it grows louder with each passing second. The final scheme remains open to interpretation.